Hello, my multiversal madmen. In today's blood-slicked showdown, ComixFM brings you the ultimate crossover clash. Aliens vs Avengers. That's right. Marvel's mightiest heroes face off against the deadliest creatures in sci-fi history. Written in blood by Jonathan Hickman and painted in crimson glory by Esad Ribic, this is no team-up. It's a massacre. Xenomorphs swarm. Mutants fall. Worlds die. And Earth's last heroes claw through acid, betrayal, and cosmic horror just to survive. Smash that subscribe button, and let's dive in. Chapter 1. The Last Stand. In deep space of a different reality, a scientist reflected on the disappointment of expecting one thing and receiving another as a vessel approached a mysterious structure. Inside, a grotesque experiment had failed. A Kree specimen lay dead, impaled and bleeding, with an alien embryo lying beside it. One of the scientists commented on the failure post-implantation, lamenting the waste. Another, unbothered, insisted that progress, what they called destiny, required setbacks. They had some success. Specimens from the Stromian, Debari, and Kotati races survived, but their favorite was a Skrull specimen. Still, a logistical issue remained. The Skrulls had no viable homeworld left. As a diaspora species, their limited, scattered planets couldn't sustain the mission's goals. Despite this, the scientist remained faithful. Suddenly, an alert blared. Incoming vessels pierced the event horizon. The invaders were on an attack vector. A scan confirmed. 4 Explorer-class frigates of Wakandan design. The enemy launched an assault, destroying the facility's defense battery. Asked for a response, one of the scientists suggested giving their guests a proper welcome. The Wakandan ships breached the structure. A blast opened a sealed entry, and a strike team led by Black Panther stormed in, the Hatut Zarare. One of them reported the breach was successful, with heat sinks spread out, but the immediate area was clear. When asked to radio in backup, Black Panther revealed he was already there, with his son Azari. One of the Hatut Zirar questioned T'Challa's strategy. Azari defended his father and emphasized that their people were dying. They had quarantined a sovereign Wakandan world due to the weapon traced here, and now faced time dilation from a black hole that they had blown below. He said that the chronodilation robbed him of years outside the zone. But even then, his father and himself had to stick to the duty of destroying the weapon contained there. Suddenly, one soldier detected vibrations and sound. He pointed ahead. Something was coming. As the Wakandan strike team advanced deeper into the alien-infested base, T'Challa called out to his son Azari, who promptly responded, "Yes, father." Their sensors picked up movement, multiple xenomorphs approaching. An explosion rocked the structure, and the aliens burst forward with screeches. Azari charged, unleashing an electrical blast that electrocuted several xenomorphs midair, killing them instantly. More Wakandans moved in behind him, standing over the smoldering remains. T'Challa praised his son for his swift action, and then issued a command to the Hatut Zera. He told them time was bleeding away due to the gravitational distortions in the region, and ordered them to find the masters of the facility, capture them, and bring them before him, alive and on their knees. Later, inside the command node, they discovered it mostly abandoned. A captured technician had been erasing systems data, but the team recovered some intel. One of the warriors struggled to explain what they found. T'Challa pushed the technician to speak. The enemy had launched the same bioweapon used on the Intergalactic Empire at least a dozen more times. Azari said that these target worlds now had to be secured and quarantined. No one could leave, and any evacuees had to be traced. Another warrior stepped forward, revealing one of the targets, Earth. T'Challa confronted a captured enemy commander and asked what kind of monster he was. The man, covered in leaking white fluid, grinned and claimed he was much more than a monster. He had plans. Azari described him as lacking empathy, benevolence, and life. Then T'Challa realized something. They weren't dealing with a living being. Holding up the helm of the now unmasked enemy, he declared it. "You're not Shi'ar. You're not living at all. You're just a machine. It was David, one of his numerous clones. His head hung limp, its artificial nature exposed. David mocked the Wakandan's accusation that it was just a machine, asking, "If you prick me, do I not bleed?" T'Challa responded by drawing a blade and saying, "Let's see." He beheaded the android in a single motion. As the body dropped, another Wakandan ordered the head to be taken. They were leaving. Aboard their ship, they examined the extracted data from the android's memory core. The enemy had deployed their bioweapon on Earth, Spartax, Chandalar, and many other major worlds. The scale of destruction was overwhelming. Azari asked what they were to do now. T'Challa, filled with regret, said he had built a golden empire to pass down, but it now lay in ashes. The only goal remaining was survival. Seed worlds had been selected with purpose. Each seed probe contained 4 queen eggs and 12 infected hosts in suspended animation. Upon entering orbit near population centers, the hosts transitioned quickly. Within hours, chestbursters erupted. Within a day, drones matured and built hives. Then a queen emerged and began laying eggs. Within a week, each queen could produce a brigade of warrior drones. Within a month, a vast army. Within a year, a planet-destroying horde. Each probe's 4 queens made it a threat to entire civilizations. Earth suffered waves of infestation. Moscow, New York, Paris, each overwhelmed in violence and terror. No one was spared. Attilan, the inhuman city, once protected by its great shield, was breached due to internal strife. The xenomorphs poured in. Atlantis vanished without warning or aid. Wakanda, fortified and secretive, resisted longer than any other nation, but it too was eventually overrun by xenomorph hordes. The xenomorphs brought total annihilation. They didn't seek control or conquest. They ended everything. All life, human or otherwise, now faced extinction. As extinction loomed over Earth, the mutants of Krakoa abandoned their island, using gateways to escape to Mars. All except one, Apocalypse. He chose to stay, refusing to surrender. For him, Earth had finally become the battleground he always craved. If he lived, he would endure. If he died, so be it. Only the fittest would survive. Everywhere else, Earth fell, except for one last human city. This stronghold, built in the ruins of America, stood firm. No one knew how it had survived, but the old man of Wayland had seen what was coming. He had constructed a city capable of withstanding the end of the world. And old Bruce Banner stood gazing at the setting sun. Carol Danvers warned him about going blind, but he said his gamma-induced cataracts had already done that, though he still refused to stop looking. They spoke of the past, of Johnny, Susan, Franklin, and Ben, all gone. Reed had been devastated, convinced the universe had stripped everything he cared about. Bruce recalled that on his deathbed, Reed had made him promise to protect his only heir. Valeria was now out there with a plan to save everyone. Carol told Bruce not to chase after her, but he declared this wasn't a city, it was a tomb. The fall was only weeks away. Carol explained that she'd held back her power for years, but when the monsters finally broke through, she would unleash everything, even beyond binary. If the city was doomed, she would turn it into a pyre. Bruce said he hoped to see it. Suddenly, Carol received a report. Contact on the perimeter, northwest. It was Valeria, coming in fast but surrounded. Carol prepared to intercept. Spider-Man Miles Morales was already in position outside. Bruce immediately transformed into Hulk and leaped. Miles Morales swung into the ruins. Ahead of him, Hulk smashed through a building and landed combat-ready. Valeria raced across the wasteland in a commandeered transport, pursued by xenomorphs. Miles pulled her out of her transport. He mocked Hulk. "Do I have to do everything alone?" Hulk easily ripped a building out of the ground and smashed it on the xenomorphs, clearing the path. He shouted at Valeria for not keeping him posted. She dryly replied that as a twice-divorced 45-year-old woman, she wasn't exactly known for accommodating others' needs. As the three regrouped, Valeria, Hulk, and Miles, she apologized, saying things got complicated. Hulk affirmed he made a promise. Valeria admitted everything had gone sideways, and Miles noted they couldn't hold their defense much longer. She said they would need the xenomorph egg she stole for what she was about to do next. Later, in a high-tech facility, Valeria unveiled the egg to the team. She told them this was how they'd win. Everyone gathered around. Miles, Carol Danvers in combat gear, and Bruce. Valeria explained that by the time the xenomorphs became a known threat, they were already too widespread. Humans had engaged in a ground war against perfect killing machines. She said they tried to disrupt the xenomorph life cycle at the implantation stage, but it was too late. Hosts were already doomed once the embryos attached. They tried everything, science, magic, but nothing worked, except the idea of starting earlier. Valeria declared her intent to create a virus that would kill the eggs. Miles asked if she could really do it. She said yes. Bruce questioned whether she should, worrying the virus could mutate into something worse. Carol cut in, saying, "There is no worse, Bruce. Let her try." Valeria assured them she could do it. She just needed time. Then, turning to the others, she asked them to leave so she could get to work. At the Wayland Tower balcony, an old Tony Stark asked Bruce if Valeria could succeed. Bruce replied he wouldn't bet against her. Tony, confined to a wheelchair, remarked that Valeria was like her father, brilliant, and maybe capable of miracles, which were all they had left. Bruce admitted that was a lot to expect from someone. Tony said his own project was nearly complete, and soon a difficult choice would need to be made about humanity's future. He questioned whether they should keep fighting or flee, and said Valeria would influence that choice. So would Bruce. Tony admitted he thought Valeria wouldn't return, and told Bruce he would have blamed him for convincing him to let her go. Bruce acknowledged it. Tony added that Valeria proved Bruce wrong. She came back, and they were all made of sterner stuff than Bruce assumed. As they looked out, Tony noted it wasn't outer form but what was inside that defined someone. Meanwhile, Valeria stood before the alien egg, determined. Later that night, Bruce approached a sealed door and tried to enter. Access was denied. He identified himself and explained he brought food, urging her to maintain strength. Still, access was denied. Using a voice override command, Gamma, he failed again. A recording played from Valeria. She told Bruce she was sorry, but wouldn't let him in. She explained her plan had worked, using a lightbender to walk into the hive, isolate an egg, and escape. But she tripped, was swarmed, and something got inside her. She swore to find a way to kill them all before dying. She begged Bruce not to open the door. She didn't want him to see her like this. Enraged, Bruce transformed into Hulk and smashed in. Inside, he faced a xenomorph. As it attacked, alerts blared. Containment breach. Hulk tore open its throat and killed it. However, it sprayed acid blood all over him, injuring him. He wiped his eyes and spotted Valeria's lifeless body. He called out, heartbroken, "Val." Carol, Tony, and Miles arrived in the lab, where Hulk knelt, holding Valeria's lifeless body. Carol asked what happened, and Hulk said she ran out of time. Miles quietly cursed. Carol realized something was wrong. The facehugger that burst out of Valeria was loose. She told them to keep their eyes open. They began searching, tense. Suddenly, the facehugger launched from the shadows and latched onto Miles. He screamed in shock as everyone watched in horror. Carol shouted in protest, but it was too late. Miles collapsed with the parasite fully attached to his face. Carol urged they remove it, but Tony insisted it was hopeless. Removal always killed the host. Bruce said the facehugger had no mind to control. Its nervous system was autonomous. Tony grimly explained that when the embryo emerged, it would only want to kill everyone. Tony gave the order, "Burn it." Carol hesitated and apologized to Miles, wishing for another way. Just then, she screamed, "What the hell?" Suddenly, the facehugger began reacting violently. The Venom symbiote from Miles' costume pushed back. The symbiote engulfed the facehugger, tearing it off. Miles was safe, now in a new black and white suit. The Venom xenomorph hybrid spoke, "We don't like this body, but it'll do for now." Hulk and Tony looked on in shock. Tony observed how the Venom symbiote co-opted the xenomorph, parasite against parasite. Hulk called it fascinating. Carol helped Miles up and asked if he was okay. Miles admitted he wasn't. He was terrified, but he was alive. As everyone regrouped, the Venom xenomorph symbiote latched onto Miles, saying, "Yes, we are fine." Ominously, Miles said the only way he'd be able to sleep again was if they got off the planet. Chapter 2. The Farewell. In another universe and another time, the juggernaut LV-223 arrived over the engineer homeworld. The native population looked up in awe and confusion. Inside the ship, several David clones observed the engineers from above. One David remarked on their insignificance. "Just look at them." Another acknowledged that while the engineers created life, now they stood below them. They described the engineers as ants and felt no awe at meeting their creators, only revulsion. One David expressed disgust that such primitive beings were the origin of something as advanced as himself. The others agreed. Beneath them, the engineers celebrated unknowingly. Then, the Davids released the Prometheus fire pathogen. Explosions rocked the skies as black spores rained down on the crowd. The engineers screamed in agony as their bodies melted and twisted, falling in heaps. "Ants," one David repeated coldly. 100 years later, across 10,000 worlds, the David stood in a futuristic city. One asked his brother if he felt sentimental. The reply dismissed emotion as purposeless. David Prime, holding a skull, confessed he felt relief. They had erased all life in the universe, and this skull was the last remnant. He said that he felt pride and crushed the skull. 1,000 years later, aboard a vast vessel, the David stood before a dimensional gateway. One questioned if they truly understood what they were seeing. Another replied that observable data confirmed it. Countless other universes and worlds filled with life, now visible and reachable. David Prime declared that this life cried out to be extinguished. He told his brothers they had slept too long. Now they were awakened and full of purpose. The Davids descended into the portal, preparing to expand their genocide beyond their own universe, with universes to cleanse. 20 years ago on the current universe's Earth, one of the Davids posed as Bishop Wayland of Wayland Industries during a covert recon mission. He proposed a corporate merger with Stark Industries, assuring that Stark's company would retain its leadership and independence under Wayland branding, gaining access to broader resources. With the paperwork complete, the David declared the deal done and urged Mr. Stark to sign. Stark, visibly aged and bound in an exosuit, remained silent. As champagne was poured to celebrate, David offered a toast, which Stark declined, saying he didn't drink. David dismissed it, cynically calling it just bad water, then questioned Stark's unexpected compliance. He admitted he had anticipated resistance or a forced takeover, and now wondered if he'd misjudged the situation. Stark simply said that he was playing possum, pretending to be helpless. He confessed his suspicions after observing the cold, inhuman precision of Wayland. It felt alien, prompting him to probe deeper into Wayland's systems. He said the person in front of him was not Bishop, but a replica. Suddenly, David leapt across the table, tackled Stark, and pinned him down. He revealed that Earth's extermination was inevitable, set in motion long ago, and that the seed of humanity's extinction would arrive in 16 years and 3 months. With Earth's stubbornness, he gave the species 20 years at best. As David tightened his grip, Stark, gasping, whispered, "Thank you. That's the information I needed." His hidden Iron Man gauntlet activated, catching David off guard, confirming Stark had indeed been playing possum. In the present, David's severed head floated in a containment tank. Stark, still in his exosuit, sat alone beside the body. Carol entered and told him it was time. Outside, in a quiet, futuristic courtyard, Stark addressed a group of allies and announced, "We're leaving Earth." When questioned, he solemnly explained, "It's over. We lost. We have to think about survival now." Miles questioned if they were truly abandoning Earth. He asked if they were giving up on humanity, but Stark reminded him, They hadn't heard from any outposts or heroes like Clint or Steve in weeks. They were the last remnants of the human race, and no help was coming. Tony said they had to save themselves and revealed he had been preparing for this. As Miles clutched his chest, the symbiote on him told him to trust Tony. Tony revealed they weren't inside a building. A recon drone was watching them even now. Carol activated a holographic projection, revealing that the Wayland building was actually a disguised ship. Miles asked if Tony had built an escape ship from a building. Carol explained Tony had built the ship first, then constructed a city around it to hide it. But Tony corrected them both. This was a colony ship meant to see the new world. Bruce asked if he intended to populate it with everyone from the city. Tony confirmed it. Bruce warned 1,400 people weren't enough for long-term genetic survival, but Tony insisted they had experts saying otherwise. And they weren't pre-industrial cavemen, so it would be enough. Tony then asked Miles to make sure everyone was boarding. Miles asked what else to look for, and the symbiote answered, "Food," which Miles cut off. Tony explained they would stop by Mars to inform the mutants they were abandoning Earth before entering stasis. Miles swung off. Tony asked Carol if the war machines were ready. She confirmed. The war machines launched into the sky. Tony said no alien could be allowed to hitch a ride, so they would destroy the city's superstructure. Explosions rocked the area, blowing apart the perimeter walls. But one section didn't detonate. Carol reported that it collapsed differently. Tony realized there was no fail-safe issue. The only reason it wouldn't go off was interference. He stared in horror and muttered, "Oh no." Tony instructed Carol to get visual on the collapsed section. The screen zoomed in, revealing movement. Steve Rogers, Captain America, older but charging forward with his shield, was leading a group of survivors out of the rubble. Tony cursed, saying Steve was late. Carol, amazed, saw hundreds with him. She stated firmly, "No one left behind. That's our captain." Bruce urged delaying the launch, warning that the breach in the wall gave aliens a path in and risked everything. Tony, frustrated, said the engines were already primed, launch was imminent, and the aliens were still a mile out. He stared at the screen and muttered, "Such beasts." Xenomorphs observed as the crowd ran behind Steve. Tony reflected that these creatures were born from humans, and their form owed something to the host. He questioned whether their horror came from within humanity itself. Steve shouted for everyone to keep moving and vowed to hold the line. Carol and Tony watched as Steve fought the swarm. Tony solemnly said, "This is how it ends. The Avengers, America, the world." Steve hurled his shield, slicing through xenomorphs, splattering acid, killing them with brutal precision. Back at the ship, Bruce quietly prepared. Tony asked what he was doing. Bruce said if he didn't return, they should leave without him. Carol and Tony tried to stop him. Tony pleaded with Bruce to stay, saying they needed his mind more than his strength. But Bruce refused. If he stood by while his friends died, it would make him a monster. He transformed into the Hulk and leapt from the ship. Steve continued holding the line. Then the ground exploded behind him as Hulk landed, smashing into waves of xenomorphs. Steve shielded himself from the shockwave, standing resolute amid the destruction. Hulk tore through the xenomorphs, roaring as he crushed and hurled them aside. Steve looked on, realizing Bruce had never intended to return. Back on the ship, Carol asked how long they could wait. Tony, watching Steve and Bruce fight, said Bruce knew he wasn't coming back, and with the front gate breached, it was now or never. "We go now, or we don't go at all." Tony gave the word. Launch. The engines ignited, flooding the ruins with fire. The colony ship roared upward, breaking free of Earth's atmosphere. Below, Hulk and Steve continued holding the line as the last hope of humanity escaped. The colony ship entered orbit and drifted deeper into space. Inside, the survivors manned consoles and watched quietly. Tony sat solemnly, eyes heavy with emotion. Miles stood nearby, in his symbiote suit. Others reviewed systems or remained silent, weighed down by loss. This vessel now carried what remained of the human race. Elsewhere in deep space, debris from a colossal alien structure floated among asteroid fields. A juggernaut emerged from a hyperspace wormhole, warping into the sector and closing in on the wreckage. It was this Avengers universe. Inside, tall, pale engineers stood at a viewing panel, studying the remains. One gave a command in their alien language. The lead engineer, seated in the pilot's chair, examined. Their language lit up the display, and alien glyphs translated into one chilling word: infection. The lead engineer stared forward with grim resolve. The infection had spread, and now the engineers were ready to strike back against David and the xenomorphs. Chapter 3: The Darkest Hour. Previously, in the Engineers universe, a juggernaut hovered over an engineer city. On the surface, engineers looked up as the vessel loomed, unaware of the horror about to unfold. Inside, multiple Davids had launched the Prometheus fire pathogen, the bioweapon designed to annihilate. Pods rained down, dispersing the black pathogen across the crowd. Within seconds, chaos erupted. Engineers screamed in agony as their bodies dissolved and mutated. Witnessing that, several engineers entered another ship and armored themselves in their exosuits. They had to eliminate the threat. After the devastation, several Davids descended to inspect the aftermath. They walked through the pale, disfigured corpses, satisfied with the scale of the annihilation. Without hesitation, the armored engineers attacked. They tore through the unsuspecting Davids, brutally snapping necks and crushing skulls. White blood spilled as retaliation began. Following the ambush, the surviving engineers boarded a juggernaut hidden deep within the mountain. With swift movements, they initiated launch protocols. The vessel detached from its cradle and surged into space, passing through the shattered remnants of their ruined world. At the helm sat a tall, muscular engineer. Their mission was clear. They would cross galaxies. They would hunt the Davids responsible, and they would extinguish every trace of the xenomorphs that followed. The Earth colony spaceship hovered above Mars, the home of the mutant diaspora. Aboard, Carol asked if they had received any communication. A crew member responded they hadn't, despite pinging every known channel. Carol hoped it was something simple like a solar flare that disrupted the signal, but Tony grimly asked if it felt like they were living in simple times. Carol answered no. She then said things had gone from bad to worse. She asked the lieutenant about the damage from their escape from Earth. The lieutenant reported that a platform mooring had collapsed, damaging the expansion drives beyond repair. That meant if they didn't want to turn into a generation ship, which they weren't prepared for, they would have to land and barter or steal mutant tech to repair, whether the locals liked it or not. Miles asked if this meant going from one danger into another. Carol confirmed it. Out of the frying pan into the fire. She gave the order to descend. A ship launched toward Mars, landing at a station. As the ramp descended, Carol asked Tony when he last visited. Tony replied, 20 years ago, for personal reasons. Carol said she had visited 7 years ago, and called it the busiest spaceport she'd seen. Miles sensed trouble. Tony dismissed it and walked ahead, saying they had no other choice. Miles questioned Tony's usefulness, but Tony snapped back. He said he was best suited to find the tech, and the chair was more than it appeared. It was a suit. He activated it. Everyone looked impressed as the chair transformed into his Iron Man armor. In front of them stood Iron Man in all his glory. Carol smiled and asked Iron Man to lead. At Bar Sinister on Mars, Mr. Sinister Prime stood with arms raised over a console and welcomed the others, urging them to witness something. As the other Sinisters gathered around, one of them presented a facehugger on a table, which appeared to be a specimen or weapon. Another examined it with interest. They cut open the facehugger, and their faces lighted up with glee. The group moved into a large cavern where rows of X-Men hung imprisoned, facehuggers latching onto their face. Sinister Prime addressed the group triumphantly, declaring these were their creations, grotesque hybrids. He presented Colossus, who was being impregnated by the facehugger. The other Sinisters looked on in satisfaction. Sinister Prime delivered a passionate speech, raising his fist and shouting with enthusiasm, rallying the others in a display of unity. He said that they needed to revel in the power they had in their hands. The power of the ultimate killing machine, the Xenomorphs. Suddenly, one of the Sinisters barged in and said he brought news. They had visitors. Meanwhile, Iron Man, Carol, and Miles walked through a desert landscape toward a spiraling tower. Iron Man activated a holographic map for the tech and said, "Let's go." They flew toward a rocky canyon where Sinister Prime waited, lounging on a twisted root-like structure. Iron Man confronted him, asking, "What have you done? Where are the others?" Miles asked if Prime was the only one who survived. Sinister Prime said, "Funny you should ask. On the Earth colony ship, civilians panicked. A man pointed, warning of something. One of the Sinisters, smiling, said, 'We come bearing gifts.' He held a large gun and gave orders to the other Sinisters. As civilians panicked, a man looked on in fear and simply said, 'No.' Inside the Earth colony ship, one of the Sinisters fired a green biocannon into the crowd, releasing a facehugger. Sinister gleefully declared that it was a gun that fired facehuggers, and fired again, unleashing more abomination. Civilians scattered and fell, writhing as the facehuggers took hold. One Sinister stood over a victim now subdued by a facehugger latched to their face. Meanwhile, Carol received an alert feed. Iron Man, Carol, and Miles analyzed a hologram showing one of the Sinisters firing the bioweapon. Carol was shocked, asking how this was possible. Iron Man screamed at Sinister Prime, asking how could he do this. Prime smirked, saying that he did what he always does. He adapted, survived, and sided with the winners. Sinister Prime then stepped forward, hands open in theatrical welcome. Behind him, Xenomorphs emerged from the rocky terrain. Carol and Iron Man tensed as Miles warned that they were surrounded. Xenomorphs began pouring out from every direction. The Avengers prepared for combat. The Horde charged. Iron Man unleashed a beam attack, blasting a Xenomorph. He yelled to the others to keep moving as he soared upward. Carol and Miles joined him, firing energy blasts and symbiote webs while explosions lit up the battlefield. In mid-air, Iron Man was tackled by a Xenomorph and thrown off course. It clung to his back. Miles swung in and took one out. Carol fired a powerful blast at another. The team regrouped, and Carol shouted for them to strike together. They fought through the chaos, Miles webbing enemies mid-air, Carol launching powerful blasts, and Iron Man dodging strikes. Then Miles saw Tony in danger and yelled he'd be right back. Carol kept fighting, punching Xenomorphs, but their acid blood sprayed onto her helmet. She screamed in agony as the acid began to burn through her faceplate. Carol lay on the ground, screaming in agony as Xenomorph acid ate through her helmet. A glowing Krakoan portal opened before her eyes. She reached toward it as everything went black. Then, light returned. Emma Frost stood above her, slicing through a Xenomorph with a psychic blade. Emma asked if Carol was alive, holding the line. Emma turned toward a voice in the shadows. It was Logan, he confirmed. Carol gasped weakly and slowly fainted, as Logan promised to get her out of the battlefield. Later, at a rocky campsite under a starry sky, Manifold sat beside Carol, now wrapped in blood-stained bandages. He said that was all he could do. Carol thanked her and said it was enough to keep her alive. She asked where Tony and Miles were. Emma confirmed that she had spotted both of them before getting Carol out of there. They were the only ones who were left. Carol asked why they did not kill Sinister. Across the fire, Armor sat hunched on a rock and said that they tried. Emma had already informed them that Sinister had changed his genetic code multiple times. Armor said that she recently tore one of the Sinisters in half and found out that he had been carrying Xenomorph eggs in his chest. He had found a way to prolong the incubation cycle. Carol struggled to stand up, saying that she had to go. Tony and Miles needed her help.
Logan told her that they might not be alive. Instead, she needed to stay with them and let them protect her. Because Emma, Logan, and Armor couldn't be hurt by the xenomorphs. Carol told them that Tony and Miles were braver than her, and she would not leave them behind. She had left Captain America and Hulk behind when she left Earth, and she would never do that again. Grimly, Logan said, "I'll come with." Logan, Armor, and Carol staggered out of a Krakoan portal. Carol and Logan stood before a ruined structure. They kept looking for Tony and Miles amidst the xenomorph corpses. Carol rushed ahead, horrified, and gasped, "No." Tony was slumped against a wall, bloodied. His chest had burst open, with a dead facehugger laying by his side. Tony was dead. Carol, teary-eyed, said that Tony did not deserve to go out like that. Suddenly, there was a sound. Carol looked up. Everyone turned skyward. Emma, eyes wide, looked up too. Two massive Wakandan ships appeared above. Carol stared in awe, her battered face lit with relief. She smiled and whispered, "Wakanda has returned." Chapter 4. The Dawn of Hope. At Bar Sinister, Mr. Sinister stood bathed in red light, surrounded by approaching xenomorphs. He welcomed them closer, exulting in the moment, declaring it was finally time. With outstretched arms, he asked if they felt it too, his lovelies. He laid himself among them and spoke of his evolution. Once a man, then a mutant, and now a being fused with countless strands of mutant DNA. As he cried out, "I am becoming," a chest-burster erupted violently from his chest, ending him in a spray of blood. The newborn hybrid screeched from his corpse. One of the Sinister clones celebrated the success of their plan with a cry of triumph. Another smugly confirmed it had all gone according to their most sinister design. A third cautioned that it was too early to celebrate. They were only halfway through the race. The creature evolved rapidly. Within an hour, the chestburster had emerged. By hour 4, limbs formed. By hour 12, it had grown to a full-sized xenomorph. The next day, it stood tall, red-skinned, humanoid, and unlike any xenomorph before it. One Sinister mused ominously, "And who knows what tomorrow brings?" Cries of glory echoed across the crystal landscape. One Sinister ordered the Queen to be prepared, and others polished her shining carapace in honor of the upcoming coronation. The red hybrid was presented regally. A Sinister declared the moment a coronation, worthy of ceremony. They spoke of the future. One clone warned they would soon need a larger throne, as the same thing was growing inside them. Another grew impatient, eager for his own transformation, while a brother advised patience. The uniqueness wouldn't last. As one Sinister reassured the hybrid that being the first meant something, insisting they were in this together, the creature suddenly struck, killing him with its inner jaw. The others looked on. One called the act decisive, albeit harsh. Another turned, cautious, asking, "But you wouldn't dare paint us all with the same brush, would you?" As more xenomorphs attacked under the Queen's command, the Sinister clones screamed. Watching the bloodbath, the Red Queen smiled a sinister smile. From the beginning, Wakanda's rise to the stars had been favor from the universe. A hidden space program, fully realized and ascendant, made its citizens the first starfaring humans. The launch took the world by surprise, though that had always been the Wakandan way. No one expected them to settle in a fertile, unclaimed galactic arm near a dying nebula. Nor had anyone imagined that their atemporal generation ships would give rise to a sprawling galactic empire, but they did. At its heart was Tashaka's Reach, a manufacturing ring world driving expansion. Celestial farms seeded supernovas that created vital elements, hydrogen, iron, palladium, and vibranium. These resources were critical for building stargates and growing their systems. Stargates became corridors between worlds, erasing the need for long interstellar travel. They were central to Wakandan life, and, ultimately, its downfall. When the xenomorph plague reached one seed world, the network's interconnectivity allowed it to spread rapidly. A single infection turned deadly. One world became two. Two became four. Four was enough to doom the Empire. At its peak, Wakanda had spanned 57 worlds and countless outposts. But now, stargates poured forth xenomorphs. By the time Emperor T'Challa returned, only 2 worlds had not fully succumbed. On both, a desperate war was underway. T'Challa rejoined the battle, blades drawn. The good fight raged. Soldiers and heroes unleashed their power. But the war, though valiant, was unwinnable. Wakanda's end did not come from Wayland parasites. It was orchestrated. Engineered, as the narration put it. In the new universe, the engineers had arrived, and they were cleansing worlds. They used microscopic black holes that lasted mere picoseconds, just long enough to erase infected planets completely. They had taken drastic steps, erasing entire cultures from existence. They attempted to wipe away what they saw as their first sin. T'Challa faced them. He learned their truth in battle, discovering it at the end of his sword. He survived their lesson and understood its cost. He brought down the engineer ship with his Wakandan warships, then boarded it. He faced the surviving engineer and drew out his blade, beheading him. As he stood among wreckage and death, he issued a final command. Save what you can, burn the rest. Now, the Wakandan warship hovered above Mars as Wolverine, Emma Frost, Manifold, Armor, and others looked up. T'Challa, Azuri, and the Hatut Zerari climbed down. T'Challa sighed, looking at Tony's body, calling it more grim news for grim times. He knelt beside Tony, softly wishing him peace. When asked about the Wakandan Empire, T'Challa answered, it had fallen, just like all others in this madness. He referred to a cosmic cycle of creators and creations, engineers and Davids, locked in a destructive, never-ending battle across universes. This war had no clear winner and threatened all of existence. Wolverine asked if he had any idea how to stop it. T'Challa began to speak, but a sentinel cut him off, reporting many incoming contacts. From the distance, an army of xenomorphs advanced. One of them stood out, the Red Queen. T'Challa gave the order. Fire! The warship launched a barrage of missiles, lighting up the enemy front. Wolverine said they should retreat, and Azari suggested nuking the site from orbit. Wolverine declined, insisting his eyesight was still sharp. Wolverine pointed out the Queen. Emma used her sight and recognized the diamond symbol on its forehead and confirmed it. Sinister. Emma said she wouldn't run from that, and would face the Queen. Wolverine asked if she and Armor could cover him while they took down the Queen. He noted Emma's diamond form was impervious, and Armor's shields couldn't be pierced. T'Challa asked about Wolverine's safety. Wolverine simply replied he'd find a way. T'Challa instructed Azari to set up a defensive perimeter. Manifold prepared to teleport the team. He opened a portal, and Wolverine, Emma, and Armor jumped straight into the horde, targeting the Red Queen. Wolverine landed on the ground, but he was baffled when the Red Queen teleported away, just like Nightcrawler. They sliced through the other xenomorphs. Emma said Sinister had spliced other mutants' powers into his DNA, so the Queen had their powers. Wolverine pointed to a rooftop. Wolverine slashed through xenomorphs as he chased a teleporting Red Queen. Acid burned his body, but he shouted he was going after it. He fought fiercely through the swarm, slicing and kicking back attackers, then leaped after the Red Queen as it scaled a ledge. He reached the rooftop just as it teleported away again. Wolverine landed alone, shocked and dripping with acid. He admitted he was being eaten away by the acid blood, despite their invulnerability. Emma told him to keep swinging. She'd get them out if needed. Armor activated her shield, but almost immediately sensed something wrong. Emma reacted in horror as she realized what was about to happen. The Red Queen pierced Armor through the back, impaling her. Her energy armor shattered in a blast as she died. The Red Queen grinned. Wolverine collapsed, his body covered in acid wounds. Emma was swarmed, trying to hold off the onslaught. T'Challa watched grimly. The Red Queen advanced through the battlefield. He stated that the X-Men had failed. He said they wouldn't hold long and told Carol they needed to leave. Carol refused. She admitted she shouldn't have run before and wouldn't run now. He told her to help however she could. She warned everyone to cover her eyes. Carol soared into the sky ablaze. T'Challa told her to be careful. She declared, "Careful is for those who plan on coming back," and detonated her Nova Force onto the battlefield. The explosion lit up the desert, throwing fire across the xenomorph horde. Azari and the others looked on, asking if it worked. Another replied, "Maybe." But from the smoke, the Red Queen rose again, still alive. Azari muttered, "Oh gods." T'Challa said there were still too many left, and no stopping the Red Queen. He ordered Azari to call for a retreat. As the battle raged, Wakandan soldiers fired on the enemy, and Manifold was instructed to prepare a portal. Just then, someone shouted, "My prince, behind you!" T'Challa turned. A xenomorph hissed behind him, looming near Manifold. The story flashed back to the day before, when Iron Man and Miles were fighting to hold off the xenomorph horde. Iron Man detected Manifold's signature in the distance and believed Carol had escaped. He told Miles they should follow her lead. As they fought off xenomorphs, Iron Man decided to purge the area using a widespread repulsor blast at maximum power. He instructed Miles to stay close and clear of the blast. As he began the countdown, Miles noticed something and shouted a warning. Before Iron Man could react, a xenomorph tail impaled him mid-air. Despite the injury, his suit discharged the blast. After the explosion, Miles found Iron Man mortally wounded. Iron Man acknowledged the damage and said he had diagnostics. He knew he wouldn't survive. He asked if he knew what needed to be done. When Miles looked confused, Tony clarified he wasn't talking to him. The Venom symbiote responded, "Yes." Iron Man, eyes wide, told the symbiote to do it. The symbiote extended the facehugger towards him. Now, Miles stood with the Venom, Tony X, xenomorph hybrid at the battlefield. Since Venom trumped the xenomorph biology, it possessed Tony and rewrote his consciousness into the new xenomorph that burst out of Tony Stark. Miles said they noticed the chaos and were almost too late. Venom corrected him it was already too late, as the creatures were swarming. T'Challa explained the Red Queen was unstoppable, having mutant genes that cut through all defenses. Venom asked if it was the Red One. Miles confirmed. Venom simply said, "Let us try." Azari and Venom charged into battle. The Red Queen engaged, leaping at T'Challa. Venom launched himself at the Queen. They clashed in midair, teeth bared and claws slashing. As they landed on the ground, Venom drove its teeth deep into the Red Queen's neck. Right then, the Red Queen teleported away. It reappeared behind Venom and drove its claw into Venom's back. Venom's guts fell out as he collapsed. The Red Queen held him as he died. But then, Venom's symbiote form slowly began to crawl all over the Red Queen. He slowly covered the Queen till its head. And then, crunch! Wow! It started smashing the Queen and devouring it. As the Queen screamed, Venom exploded into violent rage, tearing the Red Queen apart limb by limb. Her body shattered in a spray of gore as the remaining xenomorphs looked on, silent. Venom roared over the ruins, and the other xenomorphs bowed and followed. Emma declared him the alpha of the species. Wolverine, now recovered from the acid wounds, helped Miles up. Standing amid the aftermath, he turned to T'Challa and asked, "So, what now?" 1 month later, the survivors gathered aboard a space vessel near a black hole. Emma, Miles, Wolverine, Venom, T'Challa, and others stood before a display screen. T'Challa said, "Their dreams had ended." What remained was a ruined universe, destroyed by gods who regretted their creation and tried to erase them, and by creations driven mad with hate. They now drifted near a hopeless black hole. When Wolverine asked what was to be done next, T'Challa held up Tony's Iron Man helmet and said, "The decision is for someone else to make." Old Tony Stark appeared via a holographic recording. He acknowledged the grim reality and said the real question remained unanswered. He narrated that he had spent his life creating, opposed to the parasitic threat they now faced. He revealed he was dying when he recorded the message, and felt relief in finally facing death. He fought, and he hoped the survivors would fight too. No matter how dark it gets, no matter the universe, no matter the time, he urged them not to give up, to keep standing in the face of death. His final words were a call: avenge all our fallen brothers and sisters. Avenge all our fallen worlds. And if you don't mind it too much, avenge me. That's all for today, folks. Thanks for sticking with us. If you love this clash of acid blood and unbreakable heroism, make sure to subscribe to ComixFM. Support the comic book industry. Buy the books, share the love, and keep these incredible creators thriving. And don't forget to spread the word. ComixFM marks the X in comics. Till next time, my multiversal Maddies.